Guys, oh, yes, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to this launch event, where's Tim? For Tim Weed's riveting new novel, The Afterlife Project. It's an honor to be introducing Tim at this time. Back in April, my name is Dede Cummings.
Really?
Back in April of 2017, I published Tim's first collection of short stories entitled A Field Guide to Murder and Fly Fishing. When the book came out, the Boston Globe reviewed it and wrote, "Tim Weed proves himself a skilled creator of a sense of place. Each story deposits one definitively into a geography of mind and map." And I was the publisher of this beautiful book that is still selling. Yay, yay Tim. And Tim was just the best author, A+. You can imagine, he rolled up his sleeves and he helped. Tim continues with his prowess as a writer in this new novel, which gently and sometimes abruptly guides us into the future, a world that is uninhabited by the human race, or is it? The titular project, the Afterlife Project, is the search. The scientific study, named the Centauri Project, is buoyed by the technology designed for interstellar travel, in this case, to send a subject 10 millennia into the future. I'm a word geek, so bear with me. But the etymology of the word Centauri generally refers to something related to centaurs, mythical creatures that are half human, half horse. Specifically, it can refer to the constellation Centaurus, in Greek mythology, which represents the centaur, or in sci-fi, fictional entities or civilizations. Go figure. This novel is a journey, a massive undertaking, I'm sure, to write it, and one in which we discover a research biologist from the Centauri Project, Dr. Nicholas Hindman. Did I say that correctly? Hindman. I love all Tim's names are so good. Who finds himself the test subject tens of thousands of years in the future, inhabiting a world previously decimated by plagues, fires, and the climate catastrophe. Meanwhile, so remember, this is tens of thousands of years in the future. Meanwhile, 40 or so years ahead of our current time, after their colleague has been hurled into the Earth's future, a team of scientists from the Centauri Project set out on their own journey using a sailboat dependent on the wind with a small reserve of motor fuel and monotonous meals of lab jerky and ancient candy bars, like Snickers, my favorite. Their intent is based on a theory that procreation might still be possible. The cast of characters is well developed as well. In addition to Nick, Dr. Nicholas Hindman, there are the 4 Centauri sailing crew members: the intrepid pot-smoking Captain Tali, Ali, the doctor on board who faithfully records all the events in a journal, and we see the climate-ravaged world post-hyper-pandemic through her eyes. The crewmate, James, his face pockmarked and scarred from the hyper-pandemic and hidden behind his hoodie, who emerges as a sharpshooting savior and the love interest of Ali, the doctor. And last but not least, the intrepid leader of the Centauri Project, Dr. Q, AKA Natalie, Nick's former lover, who always remains optimistic and tolerant, a brilliant scientist who knows the only hope for humanity is to find and rescue possibly the last fertile woman on an island off of Sicily. The descriptions are vivid and realistic in the Afterlife Project. You feel like you are there with Nick, getting to know this new future world, making trails, foraging, searching for human life, traveling far and wide to find some vestige of active human civilization, crossing dangerous swamps, chest high, holding his belongings with predators are below the surface. Nick creates a wilderness home in what was once northern New England. His camp is a burrow on a mountain ledge with the daily work of foraging for survival and the goal of searching for survivors on the planet. He knows the names of flora and fauna and witnesses firsthand the tenacity of life, as evidenced by nature that will flourish into the foreseeable future. But what of the survival of H. sapiens? Does the possibility of smaller foraging hunter-gatherers exist? As Nick travels far and wide from his encampment, readers will recognize the sites of former cities like Boston and environments. The northern New England landscape has utterly been transformed. Nick subsists on a diet of meat, fish, mushrooms, a milk made of foraged nuts. He fashions garments for himself from the hides of animals, and many of you here at this event who know Tim will love that Nick creates a pair of skis out of wood that allow him to travel and forage during the long winter months. Of course, cross-country ski, backcountry, I should say. The novel weaves back and forth between these two journeys, the Centauri Project on the boat, Nick in the wilderness. Nick is 10 millennia into the future and the near future of the sailing journey. Both are intrepid and filled with beauty and wonder, as well as fearful close encounters with wildlife, with nihilistic surviving humans. The book is magical. It lingers long and profoundly on nature, or what is left of it. The book has uncanny accuracy, while also describing a record of geological time. What a feat of improbable, clear-eyed, thoroughly researched writing awaits you in the Afterlife Project. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Dede. Dede is a force of nature, and it is such an honor to have you introduce me with such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. I have 2 books still in print with Green Writers Press, and I'm very thankful for everything that you've done for me as a writer and for literature in Vermont. It's really amazing, and I'm so happy to be part of it. So, big hand for you. Thanks to Next Stage, Barry and Maria and Heather for hosting this event and for everything that you do, and to Billy and the other founders. Next Stage is a great thing for Putney, sort of the burning cultural heart of this community, and we're also very grateful that it's here. Thank you, Next Stage. Thanks also to Wendy O'Connell for that wonderful recent interview on BCTV, which is still, it is actually going to be up on YouTube for the duration if you want to watch it. We had a really fun conversation. Thanks in advance to Charge and Yord for our upcoming conversation over at Northshire Bookstore on the 7th, Saturday the 7th, 6 p.m. And thanks to Elise and the folks from Toadstool for selling books today, and also for hosting me over in Keene on June 27th. Thanks to Julie, Daintry, Maria, Evie, Jaja, Gay, and the Appetizer Kids, and Alti, and everybody else who's helped. It really feels amazing to have this kind of energy and support. I'm kind of overwhelmed, and it really means the world to me. And finally, thanks to all of you for coming. It's such a wonderful community of people we live in, and I'm grateful and humbled and honored by you all coming out today. Putney is the best little town on earth, and I appreciate all of you.
Here.
Yeah. I know, that's a big statement. So I'm just going to go talk briefly about the origins of the Afterlife Project as a novel, and then read from it very briefly. After that, we will all repair downstairs, where there's an open bar from Next Stage and appetizers from the Porch Catering, and also from various people who have contributed, so thank you for that. But this is our way, Julie and I wanted to express our gratitude to you all for the support, both now and over all the years that we've been here, and we hope that you will join us for a bit of celebration. So just a bit on the origins of the novel, which is perhaps a little bit unusual as an inspiration. So some of you may know I was working for a while as a traveling lecturer for National Geographic Expeditions. And I was on this occasion, I was on a small ship cruise in Tierra del Fuego. We started in Ushuaia, Argentina, and then we went up around Cape Horn, through the Beagle Channel, the Straits of Magellan, to Punta Arenas, Chile. And we were on a Chilean-owned ship. It was a small ship. It was about 150 people. They had 12 Zodiacs and a very highly qualified scientific expedition crew. And every day we would do landings at glaciers, sub-Antarctic forests, penguin colonies. It was a great adventure. I actually ended up doing that about 5 times. But on this particular occasion, I had some very interesting fellow passengers. And one of them was a young paleo-climatologist from Princeton. Another was an astrophysicist who was the director of Hawaii's Mauna Loa Observatory. And there were some others as well. But we had some very interesting conversations in the ship's panoramic dining cabin. And at the time, I was casting around for a new fiction project. Dede and I had put out a field guide to murder and fly fishing. My other novel, Whirlpool's Island, was also with Green Writers Press. And I was looking for something new to write. And I was also looking to do something that had bigger subject matter, such as climate change, geological time, mass extinction, big things, small things, right? So, and the potentially clouded future of humanity itself. And so my interest was partly aesthetic. I thought it would be an interesting challenge as a novelist to take on these questions in the context of a narrative. But also partly for the sake of my own sanity. Because I'm sure is the case for many of us these days, I had been brooding and worrying about the future. And so I knew what I wanted the novel to be about, but I hadn't really figured out how to do it. And then suddenly, in the middle of a casual dinner table conversation on the ship, an idea came to me, and I asked the astrophysicist about the plausibility of one-way time travel into the deep future. And he took on the thought exercise with gusto. He took out a napkin and started scribbling down equations. And he knew a lot about quantum physics, about general relativity, and he basically sort of calculated it, at least to his satisfaction, which was because I know nothing about this stuff, but to his satisfaction, that a mechanism for one-way time travel 10,000 years into the future was theoretically possible using technology that's either already developed or easily imaginable with quantum computing, which is a bit of it's a big if, but still. So it was something, and it's something that has been talked about a lot for use in interstellar travel, because the nearest, I don't want to get too into this, but the nearest sort of habitable planet is probably around 10,000 years away, if you assume travel at nearly the speed of light, and that's in Proxima Centauri. And so, so I had permission that, because he sort of figured this out, I had permission to run. It would take a lot of research, a lot of imaginative work, numerous full drafts. I do a lot of drafts of stories and novels, but the novel that would eventually become the Afterlife Project was on its way. So the paleo-climatologist was able to give me a fairly interesting idea of what Earth's climate might look like in 10,000 years. He told me that regardless of how quickly or how completely humanity burns through our remaining fossil fuels, anthropogenic greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere were likely, or are likely, to peak within several centuries. After that, they will gradually begin the long process of cycling out. There's the process of the way that these gases cycle out of the ecosystem. So we do have, and this is the matter of about 100, 200,000 years, that it'll cycle back out and return us to pre-industrial norms. So we have a fairly good idea of what the climate of a northern latitude might look like in 10,000 years. Warmer and wetter than the current one, and on this slow downward trajectory back toward pre-industrial norms. So I found the picture that the paleo-climatologist painted surprisingly reassuring, although he did make it clear that in the shorter term, the next 200 or 300 years, which that short term feels long term to us, but 200 or 300 years, things are not so reassuring at all, either for humanity or for the many species that we share the planet with, given that we are at the beginning, or sort of we're still at the beginning of a kind of tragic sixth mass extinction that's already been set in motion. So meanwhile, as we're having these conversations, the vast wilderness landscape of Tierra del Fuego is sort of sliding by out these panoramic windows. And the blue glaciers and these dwarf and Arctic beach forests, beautiful snow-capped mountains, and then these low islands covered in honking penguins and seabirds by the thousands, but not a single human being other than the 150 or so passengers aboard our expeditionary ship. So one of the things I tried to do in the Afterlife Project was to capture that special sense of humility and awe that you feel when you're surrounded by such a vast wilderness. A kind of permanent exhilaration that settles over you, and an eye-opening sense of topographical awareness, just knowing exactly where you are, the way that you notice, as you seldom do in daily life, where you're standing or sitting or sleeping on this physical planet. And I wanted the novel to enact or embody that kind of bracing, humbling, intoxicating hyper-awareness of place. That was one of my goals. But it was in the company of these scientists aboard this expeditionary ship in one of the most remote parts of the world that the Afterlife Project first came into being, which may help explain why its main protagonists, as Dede mentioned, are scientists, part of a team of researchers who in different ways set off on their own expeditions to try to save the human species. The process of researching and writing the novel didn't end after that Tierra del Fuego adventure. This was really just the beginning. A big part of the setting was actually based on a location a lot closer to home, a place that I still visit often, at least 2 or 3 times a week when I can, a local hilltop outlook with an expansive view of the Green Mountains stretching out to the south, west, and north. Most of you probably know the place I'm talking about, called the Pinnacle. Another place that inspired the book is a little further away, Mount Chocorua over in New Hampshire. Some of you may have been there. It's sort of like the Pinnacle, but on a larger scale. It's a perfect stand-in for the eyrie of a castaway stranded in this unimaginably vast wilderness. It's an elevated lookout above a huge forested topography. And so I started to imagine how things would look and feel to a castaway in such a place. How he might go about assembling some kind of life on his own, how he might cope with the daily work of survival, not only physical, but more importantly for the novel, emotional and psychic and psychological survival. The novel's speculative framework is informed by scientific topics such as quantum physics, paleoclimatology, geology, epidemiology, and evolutionary biology, and by environmental issues that are of existential concern to all of us right now: climate breakdown, habitat loss, mass extinction. My goal, though, was not to write a cautionary tale or an argument against the climate denialists, or even a literal instruction manual for post-apocalyptic survival of the human species, although despite the fact that that kind of document does exist in the pages of the novel, an instruction manual of kinds. But my goal was to write an adventure story that would be exciting and immersive for readers while at the same time taking them on a deeply felt emotional journey that might tell them something about their own lives, or that might help them understand their own lives and the situation that we are all currently in right now. Because I think that fiction, more than any other art form, enables a reader to experience the world from inside a consciousness that's not their own. Imagining alternative lives and alternative futures, sometimes very dark ones, from the relative safety and comfort of your favorite reading chair. Putting ourselves in the position of fictional characters as they confront tense and difficult challenges, and then processing those experiences and the emotions that they evoke into wisdom, or at least working theories about life, is a cathartic, healthy, and uniquely human practice. And I think this is what fiction does, and that's why I think fiction is going to continue to be important. The book is not going to die. I suppose that part of what I was trying to do in creating this story about a future where the survival of the entire species is in doubt was to explore how that might feel emotionally. My hope is that the novel offers both a reminder that humanity needs to take action now in order to avoid the worst outcomes, and a kind of optimistic prediction about nature's capacity for healing, at least in a deep future time frame. I did a lot of reading on geological time, and I was giving a presentation last year about fiction writing, climate change, and someone said, well, how do you avoid getting depressed when you're thinking about all this stuff? And I don't even know how the answer just came to my lips without any thought. It was like, oh, geological time. Think about geological time. It gives you the perspective. So anyway, so if there's one piece of wisdom that I would love readers to take away from reading the Afterlife Project, is that we're not facing the end of the amazing, ever-evolving story of life on Earth. Far from it. Rather, we are, or should be, facing the end of the illusion that humans are not part of nature, that we haven't, from our very emergence as a species, been embedded in the ebb and flow of this complex and beautiful 4.5 billion year old planet. This would be a timely and necessary paradigm shift, because it's still not too late to save ourselves. So, let me take a drink. As Dede mentioned in that beautiful introduction, the novel is narrated by two separate voices on two very different timelines. So I'm just going to read briefly. Maybe we'll see how we're doing on time, but I'll read briefly from one of them at least, and maybe from two, just to give you a bit of a flavor of the voice. But thanks again for coming, and I really hope that you enjoy reading this novel even a fraction as much as I enjoyed writing it. But let me just read a little bit of it. So this is from part one. The epigraph is from Jim Harrison, from Songs of Unreason. Chard will know this one, and Tim will probably know this one too. We don't march toward death, it marches toward us, as a summer thunderstorm came slowly across the lake long ago. See the lightning of mortality dance, the black clouds whirling as if a million crows. Jim Harrison. 1. Late spring or early summer, 10,151 AUCT, plus or minus 18.53 years estimated. He crawls up into the daylight, half seasick and whirling in his mind, dizzy, brain-fogged, and bone-chilled, throat and esophagus sandpapered raw from intubation, forehead bruised, muscles stiff and aching, atrophied body pitifully weak and alien feeling. His grip on consciousness itself feels brittle, as if he's holding on by the slightest branch, and at any moment that branch might snap, sending him tumbling backward into the dark. He finds a water source, a tiny freshwater brook, seeping down the hillside through a forest of massive hardwoods and lichen-plastered granite boulders. Lying on his belly on a bed of moss, he tries to gulp some of the tea-colored water but can't keep it down. He scoops another cold handful, uses his lips like a straw to suck a few ounces into his mouth, holds it there, swishes it gently, swallows it slowly, vomits. An hour with his chin resting on the mud at the edge of the brook, and he tries again. This time it doesn't come back up. Electrical impulses twitch in his aching limbs. His nerve endings tingle as they gradually return to life. Several more hours sitting and crawling among the ferns, experimenting with different muscle groups, and he feels ready to try a little protein. He finds a snail crossing an algae-slick stone at the bottom of the brook, has no jackknife, no toothpick, nothing but the nylon blend jumpsuit on his body. So he uses his primate mouth, suctioning the shell lip and closing his front teeth gently around the rubbery foot. He draws the shell away steadily, careful not to bite too hard, and the stretched creature finally breaks off. He chews it well, swallows it, bracing for his gut's reaction. It stays down. So long away. Liminal memories of an endless whirling passage through total darkness. The whole arc of the species passing through his mind like a slideshow in a conference room in some long crumbled city. The dawn of consciousness, a blurry snapshot of the beckoning savannah through parted branches, horses and aurochs painted on a cave wall, the Bering Land Bridge, new settlements at Abu Huraira and Jericho, the killing at Spear Point of the planet's last saber-toothed cat. Before anyone had a chance to question what it might mean, Homo sapiens had traded in its habitual nomadism for planting and harvesting, hoarding and trade, the domestication of cattle, the invention of alphabets and iron smelting, because there was no stopping progress, the rise of the city-states, Minoans, Sumerians, Egyptians, Olmecs, Gilgamesh and Imhotep, the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge, Solomon and Buddha, slideshow running faster now, Lao Tse, Alexander the Great, Rome and Teotihuacan, Jesus and Muhammad, the Tang Dynasty, Leif Erikson, Genghis Khan, the whole sordid history of ignorance and savagery, of fumbling in the darkness with occasional lunges toward the light, Maimonides and Alfonso El Sabio, Da Vinci and Shakespeare, Zheng He and Isaac Newton, philosophy and learning, art and exploration, advances in science and medicine, the Industrial Revolution and the Technological Revolution, but always the darkness came flooding back. Plague and famine, slavery and prostitution, greed and demagoguery, wars of conquest of tribalism and religion and race, the senseless slaughter of crusades and jihads, holocausts and ethnic cleansings, and the utter banality of evil. Soon it was his own century, the 21st, a few flickers of hope, followed by pandemic and renewed violence and accelerating climatological disruption. Bills coming due for those heady decades of optimism and affluence and devil-may-care consumption built on fossil fuels. Deadly weather, raging wildfires, melting ice caps, acidifying oceans, drought and famine, dislocation and war, fracturing societies, mushrooming authoritarianism. The microbial plagues returned, lethal and unstoppable, Homo sapiens losing its grip, falling backward into the abyss. Within a generation, no human voice could be heard across the 197 million square mile surface of the planet. No radio, no television, no internet. A few beacon signals persisted from orbiting satellites, but in a moment, those signals too would flicker and die out, and the physical remains of human civilization would enter a rapid process of decay. Buildings sparked by lightning strikes, colonized by mold and termites, invaded by water blowing in through broken windows and collapsing roofs. Materials cracking, rusting, rotting, corroding. Exposed plastic bags degrade in 50 years, aluminum in a few centuries more. Glass bottles gone in half a millennium, styrofoam perhaps a millennium or two. Within 5 centuries, most towns and cities had been swallowed up by forests, dunes, flooding river deltas. Rising oceans eating back their minerals from the rusting I-beams and the crumbling foundations. Alluvial plains forming where cities used to be, leaf litter and soil deposition burying cracked PVC pipes. Dead keyboards and LCD screens, the buckled asphalt of roads and parking lots. A few thousand years more, and a sentient observer would be hard-pressed to discover any evidence at all of humanity's brief flourish on the land masses of Earth. Down below the surface, however, in a carefully prepared limestone cavern, at least one human being had persisted, twitching and shuddering, bruised by the bands and harnesses that held him in place, conscious of nothing but a vague ache in his limbs as his atrophied body whirled through the darkness like a sleeping customer on a nightmarish, never-ending carnival ride. Suddenly, his oxygen supply had been cut off, and he'd been choking. His eyes had opened, but there was nothing to see in the blackness, a contraction in his gut. Then intense pain spreading up through his chest and throat like a powerful fist pulling his vital organs out through his gullet. It's only the tubes retracting, a long, unused inner voice cautioned, reassured him. Foul stomach acid surged up behind them, burning his throat, and he felt an overwhelming need to throw up, even though he couldn't because his stomach had been vacuumed empty. The sphere that had contained him all this time opened slowly, a mechanized Easter egg. The harness released, and he dropped into the darkness, his forehead hitting the stone floor with a sharp crack. The pain accompanying the slow revival of his nervous system had been nearly unbearable. Much worse, though, was the return of specific memory. He could still feel the tender impression of Natalie's lips on his cheek from that one final kiss, awkward because of the tubes running out of both corners of his mouth. She'd squeezed his hand and backed away, smiling encouragement, the tears in her eyes glimmering in the bright LED work lights. Then, turning away to signal another member of the team, she'd stepped out of his line of vision forever. The hydraulic closing mechanism had kicked in, the wedge of the visible world narrowing inexorably to a single horizontal line of bright white light, his final glimpse of the 21st century. With a hydraulic sigh, the vacuum seal had closed, leaving him alone in the darkness for another moment or two before the drugs had kicked in and he'd lost consciousness. Then he'd found himself awake again, face down on the cool stone, the air filling his slowly recovering lungs, moist and redolent of earth and limestone. Natural, unrecycled air, bracingly fresh in his nostrils. Eventually he'd been able to sit up with his knees hugged in and his head resting on his clasped forearms. After a long time in this position, perhaps another half revolution of the planet, he'd gathered the strength to try his feet. He'd swayed in place, slowly gaining balance, shuffled forward through the darkness in the direction of his ancient memory of the cave exit. After some fumbling and a few false turns, he'd spotted a beam of natural light slanting in through the access tunnel. Incrementally, he dragged himself up through the slanted chimney of rock, laboring and groaning until his elbows finally rested at the edge of the cave mouth, a small, bright triangle of sunlight cross-hatched by an unruly mat of roots and vines and dead leaves. It was the sunlight and the vegetation of the deep future, where he will now pass whatever remaining months or years of life fate has granted him. So I'll stop there. That's all I want to read. Just give me a sense of it. Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to announce that appetizers and open bar are waiting for us downstairs. Toadstool is selling books right outside the door, and I will be signing them on a table downstairs, but there's no rush. Those delicious appetizers will be circulating, and the bar will be open until 8, so let's party. Wow.